Ahead now to Thursday's Democratic presidential debate and the next phase of the campaign for both parties coming out of New Hampshire. Joining us are Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today, and Reed Wilson, chief political correspondent for the politics and polling website Morning Consult. All right, let's start with the Republicans first. How meaningful was Trump's win?
Hey, pretty meaningful. That was, he not only won among traditional Republican voters in New Hampshire, he won among non-traditional Republican voters, among independents who voted in the Republican primary, among people who were voting in a Republican primary for the first time. So he is clearly drawing new people into the Republican coalition, and that raises a possibility that he will change what it means to be a Republican.
What about Kasich coming in second?
Kasich essentially staved off the end of his campaign. The problem for him going forward, though, is that he's likely to be living essentially hand to mouth for the rest of the campaign. He spent most of his war chest in New Hampshire because it was either do or die there. Now, as he raises money in the wake of a surprisingly good showing, the first time I think we can ever say 16% is a surprisingly good showing, he'll be essentially spending every dollar he possibly can on television ads to introduce himself to voters in South Carolina, and then if he makes it out of there alive, to voters in Nevada, and then on to the Super Tuesday states.
Rubio even admitted yesterday, and kind of his, or day before, on his concession speech, saying, "This is my fault. This is my debate performance. It won't happen again." Was it that singular event that just?
I think we know from the exit polls of voters that that debate loomed very large. In the last-minute decisions made by a lot of Republican voters, clearly it really hurt Rubio. We thought he was on a path to be second or at worst third. That didn't happen. So I think that the next debate, he's going to have a lot to prove. It's not that he's damaged beyond the possibility of recovery, but he's definitely damaged. He needs to prove that he can be more self-assured, be more self-confident, and especially be more spontaneous in the next debate.
All right, speaking of self-assured, confident, spontaneous, Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush's this result in New Hampshire was just about the worst thing that could have happened for sort of the business lane Republicans who were all trying to find one candidate to coalesce around. It looked like Rubio coming out of Iowa. Rubio finishes fifth in New Hampshire. Jeb Bush only barely ahead of him. And now they've got a new contender for the crown in John Kasich, who will at least stick around and try to win those voters going forward. So this means a divided business lane of the Republican Party. Ted Cruz has his avenue, especially among evangelical voters who play a huge role in South Carolina, and Donald Trump has his fans, as Susan says, largely new folks coming into the process. It's hard to see how the business end coalesces before we get to the really big Super Tuesday states on March 1st.
So speaking of the business end, how much does the war chest matter at this point? If you're Jeb Bush, you've got a fair amount of support. Perhaps if you're Ted Cruz, you've picked up some.
So tell me how much good that's done Jeb Bush so far.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not much. He spent more than anybody else on ads, on organization. Now, of course, we do enter a phase of the campaign where it matters a little more. In these big states, you do less retail campaigning, TV ads, and can mean more. But so far, this has not rescued Jeb Bush. This has been a campaign of momentum, enthusiasm, and anger, not one where money talks.
Okay, and Ted Cruz seemed to spend the least amount of money and had a pretty respectable showing in New Hampshire, not where his demographic, his base is.
And I mean, he spent about $18 per vote, which is a bargain in this day and age when Jeb Bush is spending somewhere around $1,200 per vote, including the super PAC. Cruz's opportunities lie ahead, not only in South Carolina, where, as I say, evangelical voters play a huge role, but also in those March 1st Super Tuesday primaries. A lot of southern states are voting that day: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Virginia, Texas, Cruz's home state, Oklahoma, all places where conservatives play a huge role, and especially evangelical conservatives.
Okay, so today we heard basically Fiorina and Christie deciding to leave. Surprise?
No, not a surprise. And in fact, if they hadn't left, they were already irrelevant, I think, to the conversation going forward. You know, that's the situation that Ben Carson now finds himself in. He may or may not drop out of this race. It doesn't really matter. He's been discounted. We're down to about 5 candidates who matter, and we'll see what happens going forward as we head into these bigger states and a faster pace.
That's still a crowded field. It's not a 2-person or 3-person field.
It is, and as we're talking about the early states, and Susan brings up a very important point here about the pacing of all this. The early states are less about collecting the delegates you need to win the nomination once you get to Cleveland for the Republicans or Pennsylvania, Philadelphia for the Democrats. The early states are about building momentum into those later voting states where voters are just now starting to tune in, just starting to pay attention, and those voters who haven't been paying attention before have seen now Bernie Sanders win big in New Hampshire and Donald Trump win big and Ted Cruz surprise in Iowa. Those are the names that are getting the most attention nationally.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Democrats. Bernie Sanders' win, does it translate into a win in Nevada or South Carolina?
Well, we'll find out. It was a big win. I mean, this was stunning for a candidate who has not actually been a Democrat before to win the Democratic primary in New Hampshire over the person we thought was once the likely frontrunner, the likely nominee, by such a huge margin. That is really historic. He also has money. You know, he's not that he starts out with a big base of support in a state like South Carolina, but he's raising a ton of dough. And that means that he may not have the fate that some New Hampshire winners have had, which is where they can't exploit and capitalize on that victory. He is in a position where his finances mean that this race in the Democratic side, I think, is guaranteed to go into the spring.
One of the weaknesses people point to is how does he translate his support in New Hampshire and Iowa into a far more racially diverse population in the rest of the country?
That's going to be a huge challenge for him, and it's an opportunity for Hillary Clinton, who has a far deeper base and history with African-American voters who dominate in South Carolina, with Hispanic voters who dominate in Nevada. Sanders, however, is getting the opportunity to introduce himself. In just about 20 hours after the polls closed in New Hampshire, his campaign said they'd raised something like $5 million, which is, I mean, that's a good month for some candidates. Sanders is going to have the resources necessary to keep his message on the air in South Carolina, which hasn't seen a lot of advertising spending yet, in Nevada and beyond.
And finally, what's the Clinton camp thinking today?
Well, I think they're distressed. I think they're distressed by her showing. They'd hoped maybe they'd keep it to single digits. That didn't happen in New Hampshire. Also, you look at what voters told us in the exit polls. They don't find her honest. They don't find her trustworthy. She has a huge deficit when it comes to younger voters, voters under 30. These are issues that she's going to have to address in the next couple weeks if she's going to prevail.
The exit polls were a disaster for the Clinton campaign. Among voters who said they wanted an honest and trustworthy candidate, Sanders won more than 90% of the vote. Even among voters who said that Clinton shared their views, 40% of those voters voted for Bernie Sanders. It's really hard to see at this moment any sort of silver lining for the Clinton campaign coming out of New Hampshire, a state that effectively launched Bill Clinton into the White House.
All right, Reed Wilson from Morning Consult, Susan Page from USA Today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.